Chet Holmgren has the most pressure on him this season, and that's not a bad thing.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I am your host, new member and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LO ThunderPod. On today's show, we're diving into which players on this Thunder roster has the most pressure this season and why pressure isn't a bad thing. We're also going to dive into your mailbag questions, including what the rotation could look like this season. All of that and more coming up. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We are here for you, talking Thunder basketball. You everydayers, we appreciate you. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast from. When you look at this season, obviously there's a sense of relief, honestly, that the Thunder have a championship under their belt, but there's also a sense of urgency to fulfill a dynastic opportunity in Oklahoma City, to buck the trend of a current parity era in the NBA, the likes of which we've never seen before, frankly, in this league. The Thunder have the best chance to do that. They retain 99% of their championship roster, and in that mix includes a young core that will continue to get better. So who faces the most pressure this season? And I think it's important to define and redefine the word pressure. I think that oftentimes we think of pressure in a negative connotation. But in large ways, the guys on this list that we're going to talk about have earned the right to have pressure because of their tantalizing upside, because of who they are as players. They have the ability to be more, to prove more, to do more, and there's pressure on them to actually get it done. And we're going to start with Chet Holmgren on today's show, brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA. Chet Holmgren has the most pressure on this team. We did our top 100 player list, and he winds up at 30. He's in the top 30 after a season and a quarter of NBA basketball. That's how talented this man is. That's how much that the NBA world views he has to give to this team and to be as and how talented he is to be as an individual player for Oklahoma City. But there is pressure on him to actually make the jump. We've spent all summer on this show talking about how much we expect from Chet Holmgren this season and expect it from top down. It starts with getting him more shots. How do you get him more shots? Well, he's got to take a higher volume of threes because that's the most natural progression of his shot diet, is by being a safety release valve in this offense. When J-Dub and Shea are getting downhill, when the ball swings around the perimeter, getting him the ball and him firing it away from beyond the arc is going to be a big deal. It also comes with his ability to get off the catch, get to that mid-range spot and actually convert there, get to the rim like he did before that hip fracture where he got to the free throw line for easy points, where he got to the rim for easy points. The pick and pop stuff with Shea, which I think can be facilitated easier with a staggerization that I expect to see from Oklahoma City, where perhaps Chet's the first guy off the floor. If you start the double big lineup, he's the first guy off the floor, but he closes the quarter with Shea and without Hartenstein. There's all these different avenues for the Thunder to try to facilitate that, but there's also a level of Chet, like being a top 3 talent in his draft still to this day with the information we currently have, but also back then, as a prospect, he held such upside and such promise that he was in the argument and consideration for the top overall pick, ends up going to. So when you look at this Thunder roster, if Chet Holmgren can actualize that offensive development, and he can shoot close to 40% or at 40% from 3, and he can get to the free throw line more, and you couple that with him being a top 3 defender in this league, that catapults an already championship team to a new level, to a higher level. And that's why it was okay for the Thunder to sit back this offseason and not do anything except for retain. I mean, yes, they traded Dylan Jones to clear up a spot for the number 15 pick, Thomas Sorber, who's out for the year. But in terms of winners of the offseason, aside from getting a green check mark for re-signing their talent, the Thunder aren't making the splashy moves that Denver is, that Houston is, that Atlanta has, even Orlando. Like they have not been making signature offseason moves because they don't need to. And why they don't need to is because Chet Holmgren has pressure on him and pressure that he can deliver on to elevate his status, which is already top 30 in the league, to elevate his status and help this Thunder offense be better than they were a year ago, especially in the postseason. Because that defense, it disguised a lot of warts on the Thunder's resume last postseason. And you just think about how much smoother things look if those threes are going down, which they were not in the postseason last year. And how much that opens up for the rest of this roster. And how the scoring gravity of Shea and J-Dub should reward Chet with easy, clean shot quality looks that he's capable of hitting, because he's hit it at every stage of his career. High school, college, rookie season, he's hit those shots. And there's an explainable reason. You know, this is another reason why people are so high on him making this jump, is that it's, one, not unfounded. We've seen him have offensive success in the NBA. We've also seen him have success at every stop. But two, the fact that he fractured his hip last year, returned to the floor quicker than even the Thunder expected, and still played such a valuable role that if you do not have his defensive anchorship in the NBA Finals, the Thunder do not win a championship. They don't make it through that playoff run. So for as much as you can point to his offense in the postseason, his defense is what made this thing possible. His defense is what made you be able to have a parade in June. And the sky is then the limit for what this team can achieve if he gets back to that first 9-game sample size, or even close to it, where he's averaging 15 points, a couple assists, 7 boards, steal, 3 blocks, shooting 40% from 3. If he can get somewhere in that stratosphere, and part of that comes with, you know, more shots that he needs to be set up for, but if you get back into that stratosphere, then this team then has a historically great defense and an offense that truly is a pick your poison unit that there is no solution for, that there is no great game plan for, that your hope at playing elite defense against them is just that they miss shots. And anytime you can put the opposition in such a bind, you're already one leg up. So if their best case is just hoping you miss quality looks, that's bad news, especially whenever you generate more great looks in transition than anybody else because of your historically great defense, and especially whenever they can't score on the other end because of your historically great defense. So there is pressure on Chet to fulfill that prophecy, because if you go into this season and Chet doesn't take that next step offensively, you open yourself up to perhaps Denver, who pushed a younger Thunder team that hadn't been as battle tested. And you can have all the caveats you want to. The facts remain the facts. Denver pushed this team to 7 games last year. They had some matchup advantages that the Thunder were able to overcome. And yes, J-Dub was dealing with an injury. And yes, this team was young. And that was really their first signature series win and their first time getting over the hump of adversity in the postseason. And now they've grown from that. They've learned from that. But the facts are the facts. Like, Denver got better than last season. Denver is equipped to present those same matchup issues. So you can see how the road to repeating as a champion is already hard, and it gets even harder if Chet Holmgren doesn't take the leap that we're expecting him to. And that's why he has pressure on him this year. But again, pressure is not a bad thing. Pressure is not some scary thing. It's pressure that he's earned because of how good he is. It's pressure that the Thunder have placed on him because of how good he is. Like, he's so good, you knew you didn't have to reinvent the wheel this offseason. You knew this offseason you didn't need to go panic and try to fix any sort of flaw that might have popped up en route to a championship. You needed to get him healthy, get him working on his game, and get back to the next season. And that's what he's done. And the offseason workouts from Chet, it should get you pretty excited about what he's going to be this upcoming season, along with, again, the most important part, the fact that you already have a sample size of him being good in the NBA, which is larger than the 9-game sample size that goes back to his rookie season. So he has the most pressure, but he's not alone. I'm going to tell you why Cason Wallace has pressure. I'll tell you why Isaiah Joe has pressure. And I'll talk about the rest of this roster coming up. But first, I want to tell you right now, better good friends over at Monarch Money. Check out Monarch Money today. Whenever you go there, you're going to have a sigh of relief because most people can't even name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks or properties or investments. Whenever you don't have the full picture, you are leaving money on the table. That's why with Monarch Money, there is an all-in-one personal finance tool for you there at Monarch Money that brings all of your financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch Money is built for people with busy lives, so you can pull off organizing your finances with Monarch Money for you. Monarch Money does the heavy lifting for you. That way you can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear visual data, and get smart categorization of your spending, and finally take control of your money without even using a single spreadsheet. And that clear visualization of your data, of your information, is the most important part for me. Because one thing that they're able to do is tell you what you're spending on subscription services. You know, you might forget that you have a streaming service that you no longer watch. And like, hey, you can save money just right there, just that fast, on top of the bigger picture stuff that they can do for you. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com on your browser for your first year to get 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNBA for half off of your first year. We're back on the Lockdown Thunder podcast on the Lockdown Podcast Network, your teams every day. Folks, when you look at this Thunder roster, who's the second guy with pressure on him? To me, it's Cason Wallace. You know, Cason Wallace is entering a season in which he'll be extension eligible at the end of the year. He has not averaged double-digit points per game yet in his career. And he also hasn't been a consistent shooter. Now, what is he? He's an elite defender, and he's a guy who I think is a better shooter than the stats indicate, and who I think will shoot the ball really well this season. But he hasn't proven that. You look at his first 2 seasons in the NBA, 42% from three, down to 35% from three. That includes some costly misses in the corners on very high-quality looks. Now, do I think that Cason Wallace magically forgot how to shoot the basketball? No, he didn't. He did up his 3-point shot attempts per game by about 0.3, which shouldn't have necessitated a decline to the extent that it did, especially, again, given the quality of those looks. But he did offer more on the ball. He did offer more as a facilitator. He did offer more as a guy who can get to the rim and playing off the catch. And I think he's an elite cutter. And elite cutters, I think, can be described in multiple different ways. He's not the explosive backdoor, feed him the rock on the backdoor cut. He's going to rise up and just jam it home, although he does have a lot of bounce. You can see that by all the posters that he's collected already in his young career. But what does he do so well? Cason Wallace is kind of like a tight end. Doesn't have a tight end body, has more of a safety body, as Mark called him Ed Reed during his rookie press conference, and that's out every time he plays defense. But what do tight ends do typically? Typically, tight ends hang about 5-6 yards from the line of scrimmage. They're typically a safety net for the quarterback. They're typically just going to find the open space. They have a lot of option routes, and that's how Cason Wallace cuts. They run some guard-to-guard screens where he's the screener. He just kind of floats through the lane, bounces to that dunker spot, bounces back to the corner, bounces back into the dunker spot, and eventually you can find him where the defense isn't, and he can rack up easy points and keep the offense in rhythm. And another way in which he can keep that offense in rhythm is by converting from beyond the arc. And I think that the 3-point volume needs to go up. I think that the 3-point percentage needs to go up. And if it does, you have another elite 3-and-D option. I think that you can make the case for Lu Dort being the best 3-and-D player in the league, considering where he's at 3-point percentages. I know that we don't, for some reason, it's kind of like nationally speaking. I'm talking about everybody that's not dialed into the Thunder. They still hold on to what Lu Dort was earlier in his career. They haven't caught up with the stats. The stats show out that Lu Dort's an excellent 3-point shooter and an excellent defender. But you're going to have that with Cason Wallace, where the stats, I think, will catch up this season with who Cason Wallace is and who Cason Wallace is going to be. So if you blend his added playmaking in the secondary unit, and you blend an improved 3-point shooter, and you blend a guy who I think is a great cutter for this team, and I almost want to call him a floater on this team because he does just kind of float around the court, then you have another additive player to this team offensively. Then you have a team last year whose offense got bogged down, labored, and frankly stalled out at times in the postseason. This alleviates a lot of that with just these two things happening that are very predictable, that I think many of you in your basketball brains have already banked on it happening even before it does. Basketball Reference is projecting on their projections that he's going to shoot 39% from three. If he does that on 4 attempts per game, as Basketball Reference suggests, then that does suggest that he'll be an elite player in his role, a star in his role. And for Cason Wallace to star in his role, there's pressure there to actually do it, to actually perform. But for Cason Wallace to star in his role, it gets that path a little cleaner to repeat as champions. And you're trying to go down a very difficult path. You're trying to go down a path that the past former 7 champions haven't gotten out of the second round. They've either done worse or they've got bounced in the second round. That's been a bad track here. It's why we're in the first ever parity era in the NBA. And Cason could be the difference. And if this team can buck that trend. I also think that there's pressure on Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins. And they're both in the same vein of a prove it year. Isaiah Joe, the reputation follows him that he's a sharpshooter. And I believe that Isaiah Joe's a great shooter. But to fill the conventional role of a sharpshooter on a winning team, he's already gotten his defense up to par. To me, Isaiah Joe, not an elite defender, not even what you would consider a great defender or even a good defender. He's an above average defender. And with the weaponry that he can provide from three, being an above average defender is good enough, especially when he's flanked by elite defenders, which whatever lineup you put on the floor next to him is going to have elite defenders. But the thing about Isaiah Joe is you've got to prove that you can shoot off movement, coming off of screens, relocating from beyond the arc. You've got to prove that you're more than just a stationary shooter, because that's something that is easy to take away in the playoffs. We've seen it now 2 years in a row where when the playoffs get here and it's more of a half-court game and defenses are more engaged and they're more playing on a string, it's easy to have defenders capable of stepping into the lane to stop the ball, flying back out to the corner where there's a stationary Isaiah Joe there, contesting the shot enough to throw him off, and he sees a dip in that three-point production, which then renders him, well, if we're not going to get that three-point production, let's tether him to the bench and let's put in a great defender in there and a different archetype in there to try to win this game a different way. And Isaiah Joe's talked about the fact that it's been difficult. It's been different playing next to Isaiah Hartenstein in terms of like early in the year, these different looks coming off of the HOs with Hartenstein at the top of the key as a high post playmaker. It's been so different in the, not quality of shots because they've still been good shots, but in the, type of shots that it did throw off his percentages early on. He recovered nicely. He had a great second half of the season and all that's fine and well, but you've got to be great as a movement shooter. And for Aaron Wiggins, he's proven to you that he is a top 3 bucket getter on this roster. He just is. He is the third best guy at creating his own shot because he can score at all three levels. He can do it off the dribble, and he is a excellent offensive player. Defensively, I think that Aaron Wiggins is better than what his perception is, but he gets put in a tough situation, an uncomfortable spot where he's not comfortable defending fours. Well, guess what? I mean, you're going to have to defend fours in this system. You're going to have to defend fours with this rotation. You're going to have to defend fours on this roster. So can he prove that he's capable of slowing down that archetype of a PJ Washington archetype, of an Aaron Gordon archetype, of these bigger fours that can score the ball a little bit and that have proven to have success against him if he can become passable? And again, I'm not saying he's got to be electrifying defensively, but can he be passable? With the rim protection that you should have on the floor at all times with Chet and Hartenstein, can he become passable at that? If he can, he stays on the floor. If he stays on the floor, he's going to get buckets. If he gets buckets, this Thunder offense, again, that stalled out in the postseason, will not stall out in the postseason. And so everything that I'm saying right now is pressure to actually go do it, but it's also plausible. And the plausibility of all this stuff happening is why Oklahoma City feels really good. It's why Oklahoma City feels really good about their roster and why they brought everybody back and why even after their offense struggled in the postseason, even though they won a championship, that they're going to ride out this young core because these are natural progressions in players' careers at this age and at this spot in their careers. From Chet to Cason to Wiggins to Joe, they should all be able to take that next step. And they either will or won't. And the pressure on them to do that is in large parts going to define if this team can reach their ultimate goal. And so pressure is a good thing, but pressure is on those players. Let's wrap up who has pressure on them in a different way. Perhaps in a more negative context, perhaps in a lighter context. I think that Ousmane Dieng is the only guy who has pressure on him, perhaps in a negative way. But there is natural pressures with contractual stuff coming up for two key starters on this Thunder roster. But first, I want to say right now, but good friends over at FanDuel, go check out FanDuel today because the NFL season is here. And FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff for this can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. If your bet wins on your first $5 bet, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So if you're ready to play, go download the FanDuel app right now. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And yes, if you only care about the NBA, I'm with you. I hear you. They do have NBA lines already out, including opening night, with the Thunder are 6.5-point favorites against the Houston Rockets. But you can also check out the NFL action where you can see the Denver Broncos, 2.5-point favorites against the Indianapolis Colts. Colts had a dominating day against Miami. Denver should be a different ballgame for them. We'll see if the Denver Broncos can go 2-0. Coming up, we'll again have more on this show about the pressures the Thunder face. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Folks, we're here talking Thunder basketball. We've had a great week of shows you can go back and listen to. We've talked about the top 100 list. We've had Kevin Shaw on from Locked On Knicks. We've had Danny Cunningham on from Locked On Cavs. We've talked Thomas Sorber. We've talked the Clippers drama. You can go back and find all of that on this week of shows. We'll have another 5-day-a-week show for you next week. And then the season will be here where we're doing shows literally every day because we have every post-game recap as well. And most of these games, of course, can happen on the weekends to add in shows to our Monday through Friday edition of Locked On Thunder. For your second listen, go check out Locked On NBA because Locked On NBA it's a great show, with Wes and Hayes and Matt. But this week, they're breaking down the top 100 and they're giving you clips of all of our different hosts reacting to the top 100, why they're outraged about where their players are ranked. So you get a good taste of like the local experts in the national conversation around the top 100 list that we released this week. Let's wrap up the conversation about pressure, and then let's get into some of your mailbag questions. We'll have some more on Monday's show. Look, there's natural pressure in a contract year for guys like Hartenstein, guys like Lou. I don't consider that pressure in the sense of these guys don't have a good year every single year. The contract year is no different. These guys also are not in uncertain territory. It's like Isaiah Hartenstein, he's going to get a massive contract this summer. Whether it's Oklahoma City or somewhere else, he's going to get a massive contract. He'll have the opportunity to. Lou Dort, same way. Whether it's Oklahoma City or somewhere else, which I think will be Oklahoma City, he's going to get paid. He's that awesome. He has that body of work. But perhaps there's pressure and like this could be the last ride with Isaiah Hartenstein, but I don't think so. With Ousmane Dieng, I don't think that adds pressure to it. To clarify, I don't know if it'll be his last ride on OKC. With Ousmane Dieng, there's pressure in a way to define yourself as an NBA player. But even so, he's 21 years old, and a team, whether it's at the deadline or next summer, if he wants to be back in the NBA, and I think that he will, we'll take a shot on him, and we'll say, well, he didn't have a ton of opportunities in Oklahoma City at the NBA level. He had a great G League track record, and expect to have another great G League season. And perhaps on this team, whatever that team may be, likely a team that loses a lot of games and has opportunities in their rotation, perhaps we can get more out of him. So there's pressure on Ouse because he's done less to warrant the next contract, but the situation that he finds himself in also adds to his case to be on a roster next season, whether it's, again, Oklahoma City or elsewhere. In all likelihood for Ouse, it'll be elsewhere. Let's talk about your Twitter questions. And again, we did get a lot, so we will have more next week, probably on Monday, honestly. So that means you can keep submitting them on Twitter at @Rylan_Stiles or on YouTube here underneath in the comment section. Let's talk about J-Dub from Deep. With Sorber being injured for so long, which is the whole season, any changes to how they move on from Hart with the cap closing in? Look, the team's going to be expensive. Whether they bring Hart back or not, it'll be expensive. I think that heading into the season, before he knew about Sorber's injury, Mark has been so good at finding minutes for young players. He's been so good at exploring a roster while not sacrificing wins. It's how the Thunder have gotten the 1 seed back-to-back seasons. Like back-to-back seasons, you feel pretty good about the minutes you found for young players, and they still won 57 games and 68 games. So I think that he would have found some minutes for Sorber. And I think that in those minutes, Sorber could have been awesome, and it is more palatable for fans. Like if you see Hartenstein leave and you saw Sorber play well, and you just have that added boost. I mean, listen, you see it all the time. A player has a good summer league, and fans are all in that he's going to be an all-star Hall of Famer. They're already, reserving a spot for him in Springfield. So whether it was garbage time or not, had he played any minutes this year and been any sort of good, people to talk themselves into it easier than going into the off-season cold of you have no minutes of Sorber and now you've lost Hartenstein if that ends up what's happening. So to me, it changes the fan expectation, but internally, it does not change anything the Thunder are going to do. Will they or won't they bring back iHeart? And they have so many mechanisms to do it or not do it. They can decline his option and re-sign him. They can decline his option and let him walk. They can work out an extension. They can do a lot of things to try to bring him back, and vice versa to try to get him to his next team. We just don't know at this very moment in time what's going to happen. To me, the difference in the Thunder bringing him back or not is not about Thomas Sorber. Thomas Sorber could have been electrifying in whatever minutes he scrounged up this season. And Isaiah Hartenstein's so good of a player that if the Thunder had an ability and a desire to bring him back, they would have brought him back. Because that's how good iHeart is. He's a top 100 player in this league. And whatever Sorber could have done this year was not going to get him in the top 100 list. So iHeart is such a unique talent that you couldn't let Sorber impact your decision with what to do. Now, it could have impacted the perception, but the Thunder don't care about the perception to me. They care about doing what's right for the team. And with iHeart, he also controls a lot of this. It's not the Thunder. Like, it takes two to tango. You saw iHeart be really close with the Knicks and love his teammates with New York. And he didn't give them any friendly discounts like his teammates did. Jalen Brunson and the likes of New Yorkers on that Knicks team who took less. He didn't take less. Now, I have a whole exclusive interview with iHeart on thundersi.com that you can read, which proves it was not all about the money, but it certainly didn't hurt, right? And so does iHeart want to get another massive payday, or does iHeart look at this and say, well, just won a couple championships. I already got paid a massive contract. I'm still going to be getting paid very well. Let's see where this thing goes. I'm back. I'm ready to go. We don't know the desires on all fronts yet. But to me, Thomas Sorber playing 500 minutes this year, whether he looked excellent or looked terrible, was not going to sway things in the sense of what Sam Presti's going to do. It could have swayed things in the sense of what your reaction will be this summer to whatever happens. So I hope I cleared that up the best I could. Bowler Jack says, what's the best big man minutes rotation in your opinion with Sorber out? They kind of tie together here. The Thunder's big man rotation is going to be fine. It's going to be fine without Thomas Sorber. Sorber would have had to been excellent in training camp and preseason to carve out a niche for him in the front court. But you extended J-Will, and J-Will showed you a lot in that second round that you want to explore, especially in the regular season. And he's still a young player. You have Ihart and Chet, who are two top 100 players in your front court. We know Mark's affinity for playing small ball, which is not going to be abandoned, and even wasn't abandoned last year. Like even last year, whenever you had both bigs available, they didn't abandon small ball. They still played it, so you have guys like J-Dub who could play 5, Kenrich especially, playing that small ball 5 role. And then, like we talked about Monday, when it comes to navigating 82 games, Brendan Carlson is an excellent 4th string option. Just to navigate 82 games. I'm not going to sell you on Brendan Carlson like being an actual piece or Brendan Carlson being a difference maker. But I would sell you on Brendan Carlson helping and Brendan Carlson adding to your depth and adding to your rotation in spot opportunities. He's a long reliever out of the bullpen. You don't turn to him in the 8th inning when the game's 1-0. But on getaway day, when it's 5-6, let's throw Carlson in there, save some arms. That can happen. He filled in admirably against the Cleveland Cavaliers with their daunting front court and won you a basketball game last year. So their big man rotation is going to be fine because there's so many avenues to make it work. To me, I think that it's cleaner if you just start Cason over Ihart, but I don't begrudge the Thunder for starting double bigs because you want to have your best 5 players on the floor. So I get that. Starting double bigs, to me, the best rotation would be to alter it slightly and bring Chet off first and have Chet close with Shea and do that in the first and third quarter where you have those minutes whenever Chet is paired with Shea and then Ihart, of course, in turn paired with J-Dub to where Ihart and J-Dub get together as a duo because Ihart's screen setting ability and Ihart's ability to create separation for J-Dub is much more valuable than it is for Shea, who just naturally creates separation, and vice versa. Chet's ability to pop and be less of a screen setter, but more of a guy who can space the floor with his shooting results in better success for SGA. Because then you either need to bring a defender with Chet when he pops out, or you disregard Chet, and then you see Shea do what he does. I mean, he gets to the elbow, he's double teamed, picks it up, pivots around, tosses it out to Chet, top of the key, bang, 3. And that's an option that's not there if you have Isaiah Hartenstein in the paint. You have Isaiah Hartenstein floating around the mid-range. So that's kind of how I would handle it. And then you have J-Will with spot duties, and J-Will's minutes fluctuate. If you played Denver, for example, he won a big on the floor almost the entire time because of the volume of minutes that Jokic plays. J-Will, of course, much bigger deal against Denver, much bigger deal against Houston, who has a plethora of front court options from Steven Adams to Clint Capella to Şengün, etc. And then you can get by with Carlson in the times where you have to. So that's where we're at. We'll answer more of your questions on Monday's show. So leave them down below in the comments and also leave them on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. And until next time, be good and be good to one another.